Hi and welcome everybody. My name is Kirik. I'm from Antalya Bilim University, Turkey, working under the supervision of Dr. Cihat Hamamre. In this presentation, I'm going to be introducing a novel data transmission method that we call the multiple MIMO system with antenna number modulation. So let me start with what is the antenna number modulation first. Antenna number modulation is a recently proposed data transmission scheme that allows us to transmit additional data bits by exploding the number of antennas. It brings us a lot of advantages in terms of spectral efficiency, both channel and data dependent antenna selection capability, which is one of the major problems of the spatial modulation, and ANM ends the suffering of it. And lastly, the low complexity is one of the major advantages of the ANM system. But on the other hand, since it is designed for small number of antenna containing systems, the amount of the additional data bits are low, which can be considered as a drawback of the system. So in order to eliminate this drawback and make the antenna number modulation system feasible to be working on a massive number of antenna containing systems, we're proposing a variation of the antenna number modulation that we call multiple MIMO-ANM. So in the figure 1 you see the transmitter structure of the multiple MIMO-ANM scheme. Let me explain what's going on here. So consider that we have an incoming bit. Now what we want to do is to separate these bits into 3 different groups and name them as block number bits, main bits, and antenna number bits. After this one, we are using a BPSK modulator to modulate the main bits group, and to send each element of main bits group we are using block number bits to decide how many antenna blocks that we are going to be activating, and we are using the antenna number bits group to decide how many antennas in each activated group block will be activated. So to do that, we have a mathematically derived equation, as you can see here in the equation 1. So it says the y equals to g times h times x plus w. So in this formula, the y is our received signal, h is the channel coefficients of the inch antenna, and g is the activation pattern of the blocks, which determines the channel used for the transmission. And these g values are acquired by the average value of the h values in the corresponding block. For example, the g value of the B1 is basically the average values of these 4 antennas. And the x is the each sample in the main bits group, and w is our additive white Gaussian noise. So let me explain the concept deeply on this example. Consider that we have this incoming bits here. Now what we want to do, as I said earlier, is to separate these bits into 3 different groups: main bits, BNM bits, and ANM bits. So each color here represents one operation. So we are transmitting 1 here in the main bits group. So we need to check the BNM bits group to decide how many antenna blocks we are going to be activating. It says 1, 0. And we need to check also the ANM bits group to decide how many antennas in each activated block we are going to be using. And it says 0, 1. So according to these values, we have a mapping table in table 1 and table 2. Table 1 represents the BNM mapper, and table 2 represents the ANM mapper. So we had 1, 0 in the BNM mapper, right? So when we check the condition for 1, 0, we see that we need to be activating 3 antenna blocks. So we are activating B1, B2, and B3. And in the ANM bits group we had 0, 1. So when we check the table 2 to see what corresponds to the 0, 1 in our mapper, we see that we need to be activating 2 antennas in each active blocks. So we need to activate 2 antennas in B1 2 antennas in B2 and 2 antennas in B3, and we achieve the transmission of 1, and we want to transmit this 0. So we check the ANM bits group and we see 1 1, and we check the ANM bits group and we see 1 0. So in the ANM bits group, when we check the correspondence of the active antenna blocks pattern, we see that 1 1 corresponds to activation of 4 antenna blocks. So we are activating both B1, B2, B3 and B4. And when we check the ANM mapper, we see that 1 0 corresponds to activation of 3 antenna blocks in each activated block. So we need to activate 3 antennas here, 3 antennas here, 3 antennas here, and 3 antennas here. So at the total we are going to be activating 12 antennas for the transmission of 0. And lastly, we want to transmit another one. We check the ANM bits group and we see 0 1, and we check the ANM bits group and we see 1 1. So let's see what are these values in our mapping tables. So 0 1 corresponds to activation of 2 antenna blocks according to the table 1. So we are activating B1 and B2. And 1 1 corresponds to activation of 4 transmitted antennas in each activated blocks according to the table 2. So we need to activate 4 antennas in B1 and 4 antennas in B2, and this is how we achieve the transmission of 1. And after we are done with the transmission of the bits, now we need to focus on the receiver structure of the MIMO-ANM scheme, multiple MIMO-ANM scheme. So after we get our signal from the MIMO receiver, we need to demodulate each group separately. And to do this demodulation, we are using an ML detector. We are using an ML detector for the demodulation of antenna number bits. We are using an ML detector for the demodulation of MAVE bits, and we are using another ML detector for the demodulation of the block number bits separately. So you see these ML detector formulas in the equations 2, 3 and 4. The equation 2 is for the demodulation of the block number bits. Equation 3 is the ML detector for the demodulation of the antenna number bits, and the equation 4 is the ML detector for the demodulation of the main bits. And after that we can talk about our simulation results and theoretical calculations. In figure 7 you see our simulation results under the BPSK modulation conditions. The green line here represents the bit error rate in the block number bits, and the light blue represents our bit error rate in the ANM bits, and the dark blue line represents the bit error rate in our main bits. And as their averages, the pink line represents the bit error rate of the multiple MIMO-ANM scheme. And in the figure 8 you can see our theoretical calculation results under the BPSK modulation conditions again. And when we compare the figure 8 and figure 7, you can see that they are pretty much overlapping, so we can say that our modulation scheme is legit and totally logical. So in conclusion, in this paper, in this presentation, we are proposing the multiple MIMO-ANM scheme as a new data transmission method, and it creates an opportunity to deploy a new dimension, which is the number of antenna blocks in addition to the number of antennas, to convey extra data bits besides the transmitted bits by the antenna number modulation and conventional M-Array PSK QAM samples. The advantages of the multiple MIMO-ANM over the conventional MIMO-ANM is the lower bit error rate performance and higher data rate, in addition to the lower complexity. And lastly, these are my references that I have used for this presentation and the publication of this data modulation scheme. And please note that the regarding simulation codes for this publication can be found at the researcherstore.com. And if you have any questions now, I can have them. Thank you for your time.